What will we find if we dig a bit deeper?
Oh, look, he's getting up.
There's nothing wilder than a wolf.
How deep is the archaeology?
That is very rare to see in this area.
The mountains, the sunrise coming up, it's like a new experience.
We're able to pull together more history of Deerfield because all the bits and pieces that we're finding.
Colorado history is full of incredibly interesting and iconic characters. Alonzo Hartman is one of them.
You know, we can go and enjoy the beauty of it today, but knowing what happened there before is incredibly important.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brad, the conductor speaking.
To be able to sit on the ski train and watch the world go by is extraordinary.
Have you ever had a Georgia peach? They don't taste as good as Palisade Peaches.
It's probably the most intensively studied valley in the world.
Awe-inspiring. That's kind of what it is to be out here.
Gray wolves, timber wolves, were here in Colorado.
Wolves are here, they're introduced. Now we're at the point where we need to learn to manage it.
We too are people that depend on this water.
It is necessary to have all the voices heard.
Hello, and welcome to the premiere of Colorado Experience Palisade Peaches. I'm Joshua Vorse. I'm a journalist with Rocky Mountain PBS. I cover Western Colorado from our office over in Fruita. But tonight, we're in Palisade, and we're going to be watching a documentary on Palisade peaches and the people that grow them, some for generations here in town. Thank you to everyone for being here. Thank you for everyone watching on YouTube, on our live stream. Stick around right after the episode. We're gonna have a Q&A kind of panel discussion on the documentary with farmers and community members from here in Palisade about the episode, about the documentary. So stick around right after the credits. We'll be right back here. And as you're watching, if you have comments or questions or memories of Palisade Peaches, maybe you've been to a Palisade Peach Festival before, let us know in the YouTube chat and we'll relay those to our panelists here. So thank you all again so much for being here. Thank you to the Palisade Chamber, our partner in this event, and thanks to them so much for their kind of help and connection when we started filming this episode this spring. They really helped us out getting in touch with all the excellent people we got to talk to for this documentary. And a special thanks to Talon Winery for providing the wine for this evening. So that trailer you just saw was the trailer for season 11 of Colorado Experience, Rocky Mountain PBS's premier history program. And this is the season finale, the Palisade Peach episode. So now all of those episodes are available on RockyMountainPBS.org and on our YouTube channel and everywhere. So check it out. I love that trailer. I love all the episodes from this season, and I'm very lucky to have got to work on this one. So let's watch Colorado Experience Palisade Peaches.
Palisade is the sweet spot for raising peaches.
When receivers get Colorado peaches, they know they've got 48, 72 hours to move this through the system, but they know they got something that tastes really good.
Peaches have made Palisade a very special community because they don't grow everywhere.
The first orchards were planted in the 1890s, and they hit the ground running, and they knew they were onto something that was special.
I have a lot of respect and pride in the work that my crew does, and they are often the unseen and unheard voices of the industry.
Me encanta ver todo esto en la mañana cuando despierto, luego que miro la naturaleza, todo. A mí me encanta estar aquí.
It just makes for a unique area to grow peaches, and we put our heart and soul into it.
Have you ever had a Georgia peach? They don't taste as good as Palisade peaches.
It's 4:09 a.m. I grew up on the farm, so I knew how hard it was. Being a fruit grower requires me to be an amateur biologist, a mechanic, a truck driver, a people manager, a bookkeeper, a salesperson, a marketer. I have to wear 1,000 hats. 5 a.m. and 31 degrees. My name is Gwen Cameron. I'm an organic fruit grower here at Rancho Durazno in western Colorado.
So I'll just be obsessively checking temperatures most of the night.
Fruit is fairly temperature sensitive, so in the springtime I'm constantly monitoring the forecast and the weather station on our farm because I'm concerned about those low temperatures that could reduce our crop. When we do have a frost night, the most effective for us is when we're able to use our wind machines, which is basically a 40-foot tower with a propeller on the top. Most of our cold nights are inversions. They're calm, clear, and still. You have warmer air up high and very cold air at ground level. So the propellers mix up that air to bring the ambient temperature in the orchard up a few degrees. And sometimes a few degrees is all you need.
All of our fruit, its critical temperature, which is the temperature at which we start losing crop, is 28 degrees right now. So we're at 32, we've got a few degrees before it becomes a problem. There we go.
This year we had several freezes. We had one in early April, and then we also had one more recently in early May, which is fairly unusual for us to get cold that late. We don't get into its safe temperature range until the sun actually crests that cliff and hits us directly.
Palisade is the sweet spot for raising peaches. We are nestled up in the east end of the valley where the weather climatic conditions are most favorable, both for getting through the spring frost and successfully harvesting in the mid and late summer. While we don't love it in April when we're trying to save our tender blossoms, it's critically important because the peach is a desert plant. It needs the heat. It wants the heat to flavor and to finish maturing, but the cool nights help lock it in.
Drainage winds that come out of the mountains is you get a clear, still night, and as air cools, it starts to move downhill in the canyons.
Those molecules move around and warm up, and so when that wind is coming out of the canyon, it's a few degrees warmer than the ambient temperature here in the valley. And when you're growing peaches, a few degrees can make a huge difference and can save your crop.
So the canyon breeze coming out of DeBeck Canyon at the mouth of the canyon here comes down through, moves the cold air off the orchard floor and allows the warmer air to settle in. And that was known as the $1 million breeze because it saved fruit for years and years in the valley. The peach is a desert fruit, so we get to apply it with the adequate amount of fresh water out of the Colorado River. Just makes for a unique area to grow peaches.
Our water comes from the Colorado River, so that's one of the things that makes this spot really great for peach farming. When it arrives on our farm, it's pumped out into the orchard through these poly lines that go down each row, and then water comes out through the hanging emitters here. So the canal is filled and we have access to that water around April 1. So then we can start watering, which in a dry year like this, we want to do pretty quickly because the trees don't use as much water in the winter, but they're still pulling water from the surrounding soil. So we want to give them water fairly soon.
This is desert. It's high country desert. It's the beginning of the Utah desert. And we've heard that the Ute Indians may have even thought it was cursed because nothing grew except right along the river. When the Utes were moved to Utah in 1881, I think there had been white settlers that had their eye on the valley for the agriculture potential with irrigation.
As far as the Western European experience in Western Colorado, it really began officially in the...
It was officially incorporated in 1904, but early settlement started in the mid-1880s. In fact, when you look at the 1800 newspapers in the early 1900s, and they're saying, oh, this is very productive and it's so successful, it truly was word of mouth and letters and newspaper articles. And with, you know, the early attempts at irrigation, because that was the key thing, is getting water. Initially, they brought it in barrels from the river, the Grand River then, Colorado now, to the orchard from sunup to sundown during the growing season. Then, of course, in 1904, we started to get irrigation canals, which made it easier and more people came. And by 1910, the water was on East Orchard Mesa, and so that all got developed. And the people that came understood the importance of irrigation and how it works best.
There was a lot of effort in the Grand Valley to entice people to move out, populate this valley, and they talked too about the agricultural productivity. We'll never have a drought, they said. Well, the Midwesterners know what droughts are. They said the Colorado River runs through here, and so we will always have it to draw on. My name is Charlie Talbott. My generation is the 5th generation in raising peaches here in Palisade, and we're the 3rd generation of continuity in Talbott Farms, which was founded by my grandfather.
That's just an old archive photo. This is my father as a young man, my Uncle Ross. And that's in a time when they were working with my grandfather with a separate entity for Talbott and Sons.
My great-great-grandfather, Joe Yeager, moved into the valley in 1907. He talked his son, Charlie Yeager, into bringing his family. My grandmother, Margaret Yeager, was a 5 or 6-year-old little girl when they came. The Talbotts moved out of Kentucky into Delta County, and they started farming and ranching. And long story short, my grandfather fell in love with a peach grower's daughter and started Talbott Farms. I am one of 4 brothers. 3 of us are key partners in the operations of Talbott Farms.
The family was completely immersed in the growing of fruit. By the time I was 10 years old, I was working in the shed and in the orchards, and all of my siblings followed suit fairly close thereafter. So I take care of all the farming side. My brother Nathan takes care of the packing and processing, and my brother Charlie runs the business side of the organization.
We currently farm, I think, about 450 acres of peaches and about 180 acres of wine grapes, about 10 acres of cherries. So a typical year, our fall and early winter season is fairly casual, but once we're dormant, we need to be pruning. So every branch of every tree has to be pruned in the dormant period. When we get into the blossom time, there's a lot of activities then that surround frost protection. Our blossom timing kind of sets the stage, and then we have the beginning of the irrigation season. A lot of work goes into preparing all the irrigation systems. Once we get through that period, we go into thinning time, and a branch that's 24 inches long, we're going to put 3, maybe 4 peaches on it. So we will, by hand, select and space the fruit. Anything that we see that's damaged or not a perfect fruit, that's our chance.
We start thinning the first week of May, and we end thinning on June, and we start harvesting in the middle of July.
Oh, Dios!
My name is Mario Moreno Hernandez. I'm working for Talbott since 1995, and my job here is to supervise everybody of the workers and make sure they do the job. We find all those guys, we hire them from different places from Mexico. San Luis, Monterrey, León, Guanajuato, Michoacán.
Estamos haciendo la separación del durazno, le decimos desaige, para que la fruta no se maltrate a la hora de que esté creciendo. Y también para que el árbol tenga la fuerza necesaria para que dé la fruta bien.
Stilts have been a part of this industry for a long time. We grew up working on stilts. Our stilts were heavy. We went later to trying to do shorter trees, which helps out. We kind of went away from stilts. Now we're going back to stilts.
A few years ago, we reinstituted stilt walking. And the stilts of today are far more comfortable, far lighter, and far more stable than what we had. And we get half again more efficiency today as we did back in my youth. If you walk stilts, you saved a lot of time that was otherwise spent going up and down ladders.
In the early part of the 20th century, we see that the trees were tall. They were 14 feet tall. And the ladders to get up to them, we have pictures of, 20-foot ladders. And then shortly after that, the stilts showed up.
To simplify the job, Western Colorado growers for years have used a unique stilt walking method. And what better way could be devised to reach the treetops?
There's a picture of gentlemen getting on their stilts. It would have been at the house that I grew up in. And I think there was a grandfather and an uncle in that picture. Well, the stilts like these, they would have to get up on a vehicle or up at a house and lean back. You'd step down into them and then buckle your foot in, and you'd strap that upper strap around your thigh. Stand up and take off. I am Dennis Clark. I'm a 5th generation fruit grower here in the valley. Been raising fruit basically all my life. That's a photo of my great-great-grandfather and great-great-grandmother, James and Phoebe, the first Clark family to settle in Palisade. And then the next photo here is my great-grandpa Levi and Hazel. I knew my great-grandfather really well. He was a character. Then he had 3 boys, and I'd say my grandfather was the one that went on and farmed. Jamie and Lois, my grandparents, my father's parents. And then a photo here has my family, my 2 daughters, Mackenzie and Courtney, and then my grandmother Lois and my father. Now my daughters are working on the farm and son-in-law, along with my grandchildren, which would make the 6th and 7th generation.
Yes, sir. Okay.
That's a big truck.
Briggs, you need a job? Okay, take these trees, step across this. Set one down in the trench. Atta boy. Hi, I'm Chris Schmaltz, Clark Family Orchards, Palisade, Colorado. 7th generation. This is the 7th generation here. Well, you're planting all these trees, you gotta have somewhere to sell the fruit. So I'm constantly talking to buyers, getting into the marketing and trying to get the crop moved before you even have the crop.
My daughter and son-in-law were in school, and as they were coming back, I said, to Chris, it's like, I can raise the fruit if you can market it, and he's come in and done a tremendous job there.
Oh, there's plenty of trees over there, Briggs.
The pride in knowing my family's been here a long time, and now we own about 110 acres. We're probably leasing about 40 more. We have a local fruit stand, our warehouse, where we bring the fruit into and move it out of that across the country. We pride ourselves on a perfect product, and you have mechanization in a lot of agriculture, but today it's all hand labor, and so this season we'll have 32 H2A workers. My first progress into the H2A program was Juventino came in with Arturo, and they've been coming up every year since 2005.
Oh, no, sí, pues ¿qué tiene? No, pues vengo a trabajar para mantener mi familia en México. Se ausenta uno de, al menos se sabe de que ellos están viviendo mejor ellos allá económicamente. Sí, y uno pues aquí vive uno bien. Un día me hicieron una pregunta de que si estábamos a gusto aquí. Dije, pues si yo no estuviera a gusto trabajando aquí, yo ya no vendría desde el primer año. Aún así sigo viniendo. Me siento a gusto trabajando aquí con Clark.
Juventino there, he's almost like a brother. The vast majority of them are just like family.
Aquí es bueno. Nivea, no problemas.
We have a tremendous need for workers, and now it's mostly filled by H-2A workers. The Clarks and the Talbotts all have H-2A workers.
The labor situation has changed dramatically over the years. Prior to World War II, we were almost all migrant workers, and most of them were Americans. There was a West Coast circuit, an East Coast circuit, and people would follow the crops. When we came into World War II, most of the men in the country ended up in the war effort somewhere. So the U.S. brought in 40,000 bracero railroaders from Mexico, which was extremely successful.
H-2A program that honestly has kept us in business for the last 18 or 20 years. It's not ideal for the grower and it's a costly program, but we've been able to manage it to keep ourselves afloat.
The H-2A labor program, though we don't love it, it's cumbersome, it's bureaucratic, it's expensive. It's become pretty much mandatory for us to participate in, to have confidence that we're going to have adequate labor to get through the harvest. We will remain, I believe, for the rest of my life, very dependent on manual labor.
The handwork of raising peaches is really essential, and it's the hands of the people on it are most important. So those people are the most important part.
¿Qué posibles este tamaño era 10,000?
My dad named the farm Rancho Durazno because he wanted to honor the work of the migrant laborers that were doing much of the very hardest labor that happens to produce a peach crop. So he wanted to give it a name in Spanish, Rancho Durazno, which means peach farm in Spanish, for that reason.
If I were to do everything myself, it would be this tiny little farm that wouldn't raise enough peaches to support myself. And so these workers, they're really important. I'm Thomas Cameron. I came over here to Palisade on a whim some 50 years ago. In 1982, got married and made the commitment to purchase a farm.
Growing up on a peach farm was pretty magical. It was the kind of childhood that I think a lot of people don't get to experience anymore. I was outside every day, climbing around in trees, even though I wasn't supposed to do that, eating fruit, exploring the canyons above our farm.
Gwen has two sisters, and Gwen maybe more than the others. She liked breaking a sweat and working with the crew.
This year marks my 10th season as a farmer, and we're a medium-sized farm. Our total acreage is about 40, and the size of our crop, typically with all the fruits that we grow combined, is around 350,000 pounds. So even on a relatively moderate-sized farm, we can produce a lot of food. One of the things I wish people knew about peach farming is how physically difficult the labor is. I think people understand that generally, but if anybody were to go out and work with my crew for a day, it just wrecks you.
Mi nombre es Adolfo Yevismea Jupa. El trabajo mío es encargarme de las huertas, de dirigir a la gente y ese es mi trabajo, encargado del rancho.
Adolfo Yevismea has been working for us longer than any of my crew. This is his 15th year. He is very much the patriarch of our crew. Everybody, including myself, looked to him for guidance.
Yo estar aquí en el rancho fue principal buscando el trabajo para tener una mejor vida en México, porque la verdad sí vivíamos muy bien allá, pero empezamos a tener problemas, entonces decidí venirme para acá y me han ofrecido otros trabajos mejores pagados, pero no me interesa porque estoy muy a gusto aquí en este rancho.
Luis Guzman is my packing shed manager. So he's in charge of, once the fruit is out of the field, making sure that it is sorted and packed to our really high quality standards.
Tengo trabajando aquí en el Rancho Durazno 7 años. Es mejor aquí la economía para mí porque gano más dinero.
Ojalá mientras pueda, yo quiero seguir aquí en este rancho. porque aquí es orgánico y que me da gusto porque estar en un rancho porque evitas muchas enfermedades. Ya ve que como fertilizante es muy peligroso.
Our farm's been organic for a long time. My dad was an early adopter of those organic practices. He started transitioning to organic in the early 90s. And so an organic certification means that the materials that we apply to our produce in order to control pests and diseases and to fertilize our crops are all sourced from naturally occurring materials rather than synthetic chemicals. It also has to do with the approach of how we make those decisions. We want to see that we're taking other preventative measures and we're looking at the overall health of our orchard and the ecosystem around it. So one of the tasks I'll be doing today is setting out traps for a particular pest that we have called peach twig borer. And so they fly in and get stuck in the sticky paper, and then I count them, and that gives me an idea of how many I have of that population in my orchard. And then from there I can use that data to make a decision about if I'm going to spray in that area. As someone who grows food, I care a lot about the quality that I'm producing and how it tastes and also how healthy it is for the people who are eating it and for the environment around us. And so some of what I'm doing in the summertime is just walking through and grabbing a peach and eating it because I need to make sure we're picking at the right time with the right ripeness.
They don't get ripe all at the same time. And what you're looking for is a color break in the ground color of the peach. And as soon as that green turns to a yellow or a tan color, that's the peach you want. And as they're ready to pack, the fruit goes through the debinning, washing, sorting, and packing process. And as soon as we've got trucks here to haul it, it then immediately goes onto trucks and it's out of here. Most of the fruit is in and out within 24 hours. In fact, most of it's on a store shelf within 48. Peaches are one of the really fun things in life. Nobody has to have it, but it is special, and it is as good as it gets. We are very happy that Chamber of Commerce and others make the Peach Festival happen because it is promoting what we do.
Even though it is smack dab in the middle of peach harvest, we want to get consumers out here to experience that fresh, juicy peach straight off the tree during our harvest. And it's a favorite event for not only our community members, but especially for people coming from all over the state and really all over the nation. So it's become a very attractive event. The population of Palisade is about 2,500 people total. And when we host the Peach Festival, we bring in about 20,000 people into the community over the course of 2 days. So we multiply our population by 10.
I think any chance that the public has to learn more about agriculture is positive for them and for us as farmers. So it's great to see the number of people that are excited about what we're doing and want to come visit.
It's so important that they understand and know where their food comes from, that these are family farms growing their food, and peaches don't just come right off the tree and they end up in your kitchen. There's a lot of hard work.
Because peaches have been grown in Palisade for such a long time, it's very much ingrained in the culture here. When I go to the hardware store, they want to know how's the crop this year.
When you hear the newscaster in Grand Junction say, our peach crop made it through the frost, you know you've made it because it's their peach crop and the community takes ownership of it.
We've been blessed with not only a community here in the Grand Valley and Grand Junction, but the whole state that now holds us with affection and wants to see us survive.
I like to do what I do, I think, and maybe sometime I will grow some peaches for my own too. But for right now, I'm working for Talbott, and I think we're okay, so I'm happy.
The more I've taken over, the more I've loved this work because of the people, because of the place. One of my favorite parts of my work is they take a bite of that peach at a farmer's market and their face changes. And just like the joy that brings to people is really fulfilling for me, especially given how hard the work is.
Thank you. Thank you all for watching. I, again, was really lucky to be able to work on this documentary. And thank you especially to everyone who talked to us for the show, everyone who gave their time to visit with us and let me follow them around and film and everything, and let Alexis and Amanda, my coworkers, follow them around and film in their orchards here in Palisade. While our panel is getting kind of set up, taking their spots on the stage there, I'd like to thank again everyone for watching on YouTube. Again, if you have any questions or comments or anything you're curious about the show, or something you wish, oh, why didn't they ask about this? Why didn't they have enough time for this in the documentary? Put that in the chat and we'll ask our panel. So, our panel this evening is moderated by Amanda Horvath, our managing producer at Rocky Mountain PBS. Amanda, thank you for being here. Can you tell us about our panel this evening?
Yes, thank you, Josh, and thank you all. Tonight, I am joined by some of the folks that you saw in the episode and some amazing Palisade residents. So I have Priscilla Walker, the founding chair of the Palisade Historical Society, got Gwen Cameron of Rancho Durazno, Iriana Medina from the nonprofit organization La Plaza, which focuses on helping migrant and immigrant communities in Mesa County. And then we've got Charlie Talbott of Talbott Farms. Thank you all for being here. First, I just wanted to see Iriana, if you would like to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that the H2A workers face here when they do come to work on some of the orchards.
Good night, everyone. Thank you. So one of the challenges that our orchard workers face once they get here is being away from their families. I would say that would be the hardest thing for them once they get here. And La Plaza is a platform, a safe space for them to be able to feel that they belong, that they're taken care of.
Yes, thank you. I'm so glad and grateful for you all to let us talk to some of your workers as well. It's great to hear some of the folks that have been working on your farms as well for 15, 20 years. Gwen, I just wanted to ask you, could you expand a little bit more about your relationship with the crew on your farm and how close you've become?
Yeah, sure, I can. Like I said in the episode, this isn't just like a normal workplace environment. We all live and work in the same place 24 hours a day. And a lot of times the H2A workers that are coming up have not been to the US before. So imagine yourselves being dropped into a country you've never been before, where you don't speak the language, and everything functions differently. So they're having to not only, learn the job and navigate kind of the day-to-day, but like navigate the US medical system if they have a health issue, or figure out how to set up a bank account. So as employers, we end up being so much more than an employer for them. We're very much a support system. And absolutely with the help of La Plaza, which is an organization that does so much to make sure that the workers here are really well supported. So yeah, it's a really special relationship, and I am very close with my crew. I visited them in their fishing village in Sonora. My dad has been to their weddings. So they're very much a critical and close part of our farm and family.
Yes, thank you for sharing. Priscilla, I wanted to talk to you. One of the favorite things that people seem to love about the episode is the information about the stilts and how tall the trees were, how tall the stilts were. And as we saw at the Talbotts, they're using a new version of stilts. But besides the stilts, there were a few other inventions here in Palisade that we weren't able to cover in the episode. Could you tell me a little bit about those?
Sure. Let's see, there are several. Actually, right there I have a picking sack that my grandfather actually invented in 1900. He got the idea from my grandmother, who would pick with her apron and then lower the peaches gently into the box. So he came up with the idea of having shoulder straps, and that way you could pick with both hands faster and then lower it gently into the box so it didn't bruise. Another really important invention was the Edwards grater. Billy Edwards in Palisade, because peaches don't all come in the same size, and you can pack faster if you're getting, 30 to 70 peaches in a 16-pound box if they're all the same size. They fit better together for shipping. And so Billy Edwards figured out how to do the grater so the small peaches would fall here, and then the bigger ones on the conveyor belt and go to a different bin, so the packers all had similar sized peaches. And it also had a diffuser on it, because in the first half of the 20th century, we had standard Albertas that had fuzz, which keeps bugs away. But the diffuser took the fuzz off. Let's see.
What about the smudge pots?
Smudge pots, yes. You saw wind machines in the segment, but before that we had metal pots with either coal or oil, and several of them were invented here. And they would be put in the orchard on those cold April nights, because even just a few degrees makes a lot of difference. If it goes below 28, that's a problem. So the smudge pots, and we have wonderful pictures of the orchards with the smudge pots.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, Charlie, you've been around for a while, running your operation. Can you talk a little bit about what some of the challenges have been for you as the world has changed from the 80s, 90s into this new century and things like that, that might come to mind? Make sure it's that way. There you go.
Test one. As I reflect back, I'm impressed both by how the challenges have remained unchanged, how the fundamentals have remained unchanged. But yet, as we look at new challenges, we have a faster world today. We have technology. We have different methods of marketing, different expectations of our customers. We have increasingly a consuming population that is disconnected from farming. And one thing that just really brings comfort to me is for the viewers to see this story, to see that it's real people with real challenges, with real lives, with real relationships with the workers, and a deep, deep appreciation with them. To see that we really are, I think today we have, in so many ways, the most abundant and safest food supply that we've had in human history, and yet we distrust it. And I think to bring forward to the public's awareness, who now are generations off the farm, that comfort that no, we are real people who really care about what we do. So some of the communication challenges, some of the technological challenges have changed, but the fundamentals haven't.
Iriana, what other things do you think could help make H2A workers feel more a part of the community in Palisade?
Yeah, so this year, La Plaza started house meetings at the workers' places, and we conducted a need assessment, and we asked how we could better serve them and how we could better be a support system for them. And one of the things that they asked for was that they become more visible. Like Gwen was saying in the video, they are the unheard and unseen voice many times. And this year, La Plaza started a small project called Faces of the Harvest. along with the Palisade Chamber of Commerce. And we hope to see these phases of the Harvest Project become beyond of what it is right now. Right now it's a baby, and we want to put the actual faces of your guys' orchard workers out in the public with their stories.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I can tell that just a little clip of Adolfo from Gwen's ranch has done really well on our social media. I think people are interested to hear those stories, so I really appreciate that project. Charlie, one of the other things that you mentioned was that Palisade is not only a special place for peach and fruit growing, but it's a special place because you farm workers have found better connections in helping each other than maybe seeing each other as competition. Is there an example that you have that you can think of a time where you had to go help someone's orchard or someone else was helping you? I'd love to hear a story about that.
Well, I don't know where to start with that one, but as I was growing up, there were, as a percent to total, more people who were actually full-time farmers. Over time, and as we look at some of the challenges, increasingly our main farmers are acquiring land from neighbors who don't have the infrastructure, who don't have the equipment, who don't have access to labor, who don't have the access to the markets. So we do see a bit of consolidation. And I forgot where I was going with this. Your question was?
I think either an example or a time that your orchards have helped each other.
So there was a lot more dynamic with a lot more people actively involved in farming, and there was some elements of feeling of competition in Hatfields and McCoys and whatnot. And I think as we became fewer, recognizing as you could really hear from Gwen's story, how hard of work it is, how engaged you are in just trying to survive and thrive, far better that we be friends and allies with each other than enemies. I once thought, as I was trying to increase our market share as our company was growing, that if my neighbor made a bad delivery, there could be an opportunity for me in that because I could get the next one. Peaches is no longer sufficient for us to continue. We'll move on to another area or another district. So I thought, wow, that was a profound moment for me to realize that we all need to make good deliveries. We all need to deliver and meet expectations of our customers because the rising tide raises all ships. And so that was a part of my journey. But we did have a neighbor we helped one time who was not fond of us. And at the end of the season, he sat down and said, well, I really appreciate what you did. He says, I still can't say I like you, but I can say I don't like you less than I didn't like you before.
All right, that's something. Priscilla, did you want to add something to that?
One of the things that we have in our Historical Society collection is a picture of 20 guys on stilts pruning an orchard of a farmer who could not, a rancher who could not. He was ill, he was sick, and so they all pitched in and pruned his orchard that year.
I love that story. I love those stories. Even, we didn't get to put this little part in, I don't think, but even Gwen, when that night that we followed her, she was like, I'm going to check my friends' farms now to see if they made it through the frost. So I felt it through all the interviews, what a special place this is. And speaking of Gwen, we didn't get the chance to, I'm sure, dive into all of what it takes to be an organic farm. Is there anything else that you wanted to add a little bit about what those practices take and what that really means? I feel like we have so many things that are, oh, that's organic food, but what does that, really mean?
Yeah, I mean, as a farmer, what it means for me is that the tools at my disposal, the management practices or the organic pesticides that I have, they don't work as well, which means that I have to be smarter and I have to know more, and if I don't, the consequences are higher. I don't have I don't have a pesticide at my disposal that, okay, I missed my window to handle that pest when it was a small problem and now it's a big problem. I don't have anything to deal with that. So it means that I need to educate myself and learn more about the life cycles so that the pesticides I do spray, because they're targeted to such a small portion of that life cycle to get maximum efficacy, that I really know all of that and I'm implementing it well in order to succeed. So there's a higher risk. It means that problems can get out of hand more dramatically and quickly, and I don't have as much of a safety net.
Yeah, I appreciate your explanation because I think not the whole public always understands what organic means. Priscilla, I did also want to talk a little bit with you about the marketing cooperatives that did exist and how that has changed so much that, you know, these two boxes that we have over here too are representative of, but it just was such a change for the Valley.
Yes, I think one of the reasons Palisade Peaches were so revered was because we had a marketing order that was passed in 1923 until 91. And what that meant was we could only ship #1 peaches, so only they had to be a certain size, they couldn't be blemished, they were the very best. And the rest were unfortunately put in the culls and tossed away. But I think that established that very much, you know, these were perfect peaches. And then the marketing cooperatives, and we have examples here of the United and the Mountain Lion brand boxes. But the marketing cooperatives, you talked about how difficult it is not only to just grow the best peaches in the world, but you have to find people to sell them to and figure out how to ship them. And that's what the marketing order allowed, was for the marketing cooperatives to do those roles. And I think that made, you know, made the growers work easier, and now it's more difficult. But we still have the best peaches.
And we still see the Mountain Lion with the peach in its mouth all over.
Yes, Sowell Orchard still has the Mountain Lion brand, which I am told that when they sell to the grocers, that one of them insists on only having peaches in a box that has the Mountain Lion brand, that they will not accept because they have other brands. But the Mountain Lion is it. It's the best.
Well, Josh, I wanted to see if we have any more questions from YouTube.
Yeah, we got a question in the chat. I think I'll direct this one to Charlie. Could you tell us how long do peach trees live? Can you tell us about kind of the life cycle, how long you have them in your orchards?
We manage with an expectation of a 20 to 22 year life cycle. We have a unique challenge here in this district. We call it a cytospora canker. It's a spore-borne infection that enters the trees and eventually eats around the cambium layer of the main scaffolds. And so as you see an orchard that is exiting its period of peak production, you'll start to see a lot of missing spaces in the orchard. So if we can solve for that, I think we could have 50-year-old peaches, but until we do, it's going to be about a 20 to 22 year life cycle.
Also, I've got Dixie Burmeister from the audience. She has a question. Thank you for being here. Yes, everyone is glad you're here. I am too. What's your question?
Well, many of you know me, and you know I can't settle for just one question. And they have often said, ask her one question, and 2 hours later. But, and I know these people up here and a lot of people in the audience. I did not hear, for one thing, did you address the economic impact of this peach industry in this valley? Because I feel it really helped build the whole valley. And what a rich history. So if you could address that. And I think you answered one of my questions, is how important is it for you to take a part in educating people what it takes to get that peach in your hand, And is it true that you can live on the right side of the road as far as the $1 million win goes? So there, that's all. I'm sorry, you asked me to ask one question, but I kept thinking of those. But I think it's really important for people to realize not only are they are the best peaches in the world, and you have explained a lot of why they are. And we even got people, I have to tell you, from Georgia to admit that they are.
Thank you.
But really, the economic impact is huge, and I think not only our area, but other areas need to know how important that is.
Priscilla, do you have the answer for that one? I know we talked about a little bit of how much the marketing cooperatives were shipping out at their peak in the 50s or so, but
oh, it's millions. I mean, I don't have offhand but last year Colorado produced it was the 4th biggest fruit peach production state in the country. Usually we're 5th to 8th, but we were 4th last year because Georgia had a terrible freeze. But I'm trying to think of the figures over the years. Well, when I was on the chamber board years ago, we had access to a survey that the Grand Junction Chamber had done about the reasons that people come to Grand Junction. And number 1 was peaches. So it is a huge, and even though it's, just in the summer to get fresh peaches, it's a huge draw. And economically, I think that's, it's true. And we've been doing it for 140 years.
yeah, and I think the Peach Festival is almost kind of an example of like how popular they can be, of just how many people come out each year, and yeah, what that economic impact is. Let's see, your other part of the question was, does living across the road matter for the $1 million breeze?
So the Katabatic wind disappears at about Mount Garfield. So if you're living west of 35 Road, you're not going to have lots of years of successful peach growing because the spring freeze is huge.
I will add to that, where our easternmost peaches are, we'll get that canyon wind, let's say about midnight. It's a 10-mile-an-hour breeze. I live 3.5 miles further west, and I don't know how it is that 10 miles an hour takes 2 hours to go 3.5 miles. But I will get relief at about 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And again, when that wind hits and you identify that is in fact that drainage wind, you immediately pop up typically to about 34 or 35 degrees, and it's going to lock that in until about 10 o'clock the next morning.
Was that all the parts of the question, I think?
Her other question was, why is it important that people know where their food comes from, generally? And I think it's incredibly important, not just because, we all eat lots of times per day. It's like such an important part of life, but also our customers are also people who vote, and they elect people who make really big decisions that impact our day-to-day lives as farmers. And so the more they understand our unique challenges, the better they'll be able to make informed voting decisions. That's what I really think about when I'm educating people about agriculture.
I think back to that economic impact too. I remember once talking to a neighbor that owns a hardware store here in town, and he said, when you guys freeze out, it's tough. He says, but I too freeze out that same year, because the activity of everything it takes, the inputs in agriculture, the labor, the shopping that they do, the food that they buy, it's the entirety of the community does suffer when we have a crop loss. And when we talk about that income or impact, I think we raise about 30 million pounds of peaches a year in western Colorado. As those dollars come in, those are new dollars from outside the community. And as they come in, there's a multiplier effect, and I think they typically say 4 or 5. So whatever that farm gate number is, its impact to the local community is 4 or 5-fold.
Wow, that's interesting. Thank you. Next question?
Yeah, we have another question from Amanda, also from La Plaza. Thank you for being here.
Hi, my question is regarding labor. I know you touched on it a little bit in the video. What kind of value do you put on being able to bring in foreign workers, and how do you think you could improve the H-2A program?
That's a big question, I think. I'm not sure if one of you is feeling up to it immediately.
Sure, yeah. The value I put on is incredibly high. A common misconception is that farm work is a not very difficult job. You don't need a lot of experience, but it takes a really long time to just thinking about harvesting a peach, to go out there and pick the peach, not a day early, not a day late, but exactly when it should be picked. It takes a ton of experience, not to mention the 20, 30 other tasks that farm laborers have throughout the year. And there just is not the availability of skilled workers domestically to support the needs of agriculture. And part of that H-2A program involves us making that job available to any U.S. citizen or resident who is willing and able to do it. And year after year, we find that there isn't anybody. And so that is why so many farms rely on that program, even though it's incredibly expensive, it's incredibly time-consuming, and especially challenging for small-scale farms like us or smaller to adhere to all of the program's requirements.
Too, when we talk about agriculture, the vast majority, anything that is permanent crops is called specialty ag. The vast majority of farming across the nation, they look at, equipment and fuel and fertilizers and whatnot being their top expense item in bringing a crop to market. For fruit growing, for peach growing, there is no close second to labor. That is by far our highest input cost. And we are absolutely 100% dependent upon our labor and could not be viable and could not continue a good labor force. So we place an extremely high value on them, on their experience, on the continuity that we can cultivate by providing a good experience for them.
Yeah, I imagine it takes a long time to train folks on the different elements. I don't know if you can speak to what that training usually looks like if you have someone new on your farm, say on thinning. You got to figure out which peaches you do want to take off of that branch and things like that. Gwen, if you have an idea of what it looks like for you.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I train new crew members every couple years when we need to expand our crew. And just thinking about pruning, there are a ton of different factors that you're having to weigh at the same time. You're trying to think about how to minimize the structure wood part of the tree, which is like the part of the tree that's not actively making a peach for you. You're trying to think about light distribution evenly all the way throughout the tree. You're trying to think about the ratio of leaves to fruit and the spacing between fruiting wood. You're trying to think about different overall structures of the tree. Is this a tree with 4 main scaffold branches, or is it a tree with 2 scaffold branches? There's a lot to know. It takes a very long time to get good at it, and so it's a big investment in time to teach somebody, and the impacts if somebody is not trained well last a long time when you're pruning, because once you make that cut, you can't put that branch back. Charlie?
Yeah, I think too, we asked, how could we improve the H-2A program? That's tough because that's in the legislative side of things. But one thing that I would very much welcome is for those decision makers to bring the voice of the worker, him or herself, into that conversation. So often what we see in legislation, there's a lot of voices active in the conversation. But as we heard here, the unseen and unheard is the worker himself. What changes would that person like to see? And I would like to I would hope that someday we can bring that in a more meaningful way into the conversation. The other thing too about training that's important to us with our H-2A labor is we have the vast majority are repeat. They return and they've got that knowledge. And so if we're only bringing in 5 or 10% of new workers, it's a lot easier to cross that threshold of the training, because you're not training the whole crew at once. So that's another thing that's very valuable to a grower.
And I'm sure, I assume that there's a lot of training within the groups too, helping each other out with that. Gwen, I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about, well, actually, I would love to get all of your opinions on just the future of fruit growing and peach growing in Palisade, and what are hopes and maybe concerns that you have. So actually, I'll start with Priscilla down there, if you have any thoughts on this.
Well, water. Obviously, we only can be here with irrigation water from the Colorado River. And there's so much discussion now about who gets the water and what it's used for. And we think using it to grow the best peaches in the world is a pretty good thing to do, as opposed to swimming pools and fountains. It's just critical. And the whole idea that you read about, oh, we'll just pay the farmers not to, irrigate this year. Well, with peaches, that doesn't work. I mean, you've got to water them every year or they die. And when you plant them, like we were seeing, it's 4 or 5 years before you get peaches. So water is essential. The workers are essential. And we're blessed to have 4 and 5 generation families. But, it is hard work. And so the whole idea that people will choose to grow food locally is, those are the two things that I see, is that it's hard work and not everybody likes to do it, and we don't have water. That's what I worry about.
Yeah, Gwen, what are your thoughts?
What I think about when I think about the future is that we're pretty darn good at what we do. We're good at growing a really good peach. And our task is to learn and adapt so that we can continue to do that despite ever-changing factors, despite the availability of water, despite the changes in the H-2A program, hopefully only for the better. I think a lot about climate change and the impacts that could have on our farm. In 2020, we had a fall freeze that was cold enough to kill trees. We lost about 3,000 young trees that we had just planted that year. So we not only had to pay to replant those trees, but we also lost several years of production that should have happened as those trees grew. The last time we had an event like that was about 60 years before. 1963, says Priscilla. If it's another 60 years before that happens again, we as an industry will probably be okay. If we start having them every 20 years, 15 years, we're not going to make it.
It's going to be harder to recover.
Exactly.
I mean, if you're,
Yeah, so I think a lot about that, and there's only so much planning that we can do.
What do you think, Iriana?
Well, I wanted to add a little piece of history of La Plaza. La Plaza is former Child Migrant Services, which was founded by the Talbotts too. At the beginning of La Plaza, it was basically to serve the basic needs of the workers, including childcare, clothing, a food pantry, and now as La Plaza, we are expanding our services beyond the basic needs, providing programs to where we include our migrant community in activities that has to do with leisure time, recreation time for them, and keep guiding them in things like how to navigate the systems, being in a foreign country, with the different language that they speak in their native countries. So we're going to be here for them. We're going to keep them happy, because as long as there's happy workers, there's going to be juicy and delicious fruits.
Charlie, what do you think about the future?
I'm cautiously optimistic. We had probably the peak heyday of the peaches. We're coming up through the war years, the 40s and 50s, and since that time, we have a smaller industry today, and water is one limiting factor, but so too is prime farmland that is in those areas that are less susceptible to frost loss. I think we went through a really tough period in the late 70s and 80s when the industry wasn't held or valued as much, I think, as it is today. Out of that came things like the land trusts, where you actually could, a farmer could harvest some of the value of the development value of that land and yet keep it out of development. If we do have enough fruit to be meaningful, to have a critical mass, to have several viable growers with a broad scope of customers. If we can maintain that critical mass, if we can keep that land in production, again, back to the 70s and 80s, the oil shale boom was a big thing here, and it was believed by many that this western slope would be the next Saudi Arabia of America, and that the fruit growers' land would all be developed in time because that would be the highest and best use. That didn't come about, and I think today I'm very pleased to say that we are held with affection and perhaps a defensiveness about our continued existence, both at the community, county, and even state level. And I'm very helpful for that, grateful for that, and I'm very hopeful for our future.
Have you been on any of your new stilts that we saw? Have you since?
When we brought him in, Mario, our crew supervisor, said to my brothers and I, this was an unusual request. They weren't expecting it. He said, I think it would really be good if the three of you got up on those stilts and modeled it and showed that you weren't asking them to do something that you hadn't done yourself. Yes.
How'd it go for you?
It went nicely.
Okay.
It's like riding a bike.
Ah, there we go. Josh?
Yeah, thank you everyone so much. Thank you to our panel and Amanda for moderating this evening. We do have to wrap up this evening. We could talk about this for quite a while. Obviously, we have so many excellent questions from you all and from the chat that we didn't quite have a chance to get to, but that's gonna just about have to do it for this event, for this evening. So again, thank you to everyone for being here. Thank you to everyone for watching. Thank you for your support. You are supporting us by watching Colorado Experience, by watching these history documentaries, by reading an article on RockyMountainPBS.org. As a journalist and as a person, I care a lot about my town and my state and what's happening in my state and my town and my country and how that affects me and my neighbors. And as journalists at Rocky Mountain PBS, we want to be able to inform people about what's going on. So thank you for your support. Thank you for watching. This has been Colorado Experience, Palisade Peaches. This was the season finale of season 11 of Colorado Experience. All of those episodes are available now online on our website and YouTube channel and everything. So check those out. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.